So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I know people are joining from all across the globe for this session. I welcome you all to this webinar called Breaking Biases, Building Culture, powered by Goodera. This session is actually a part of a broader campaign that Goodera is doing to celebrate Women's History Month and International Women's Day, which is called Her Story. And I'll talk about this campaign a bit later, but what I want to do now is to introduce the wonderful panel that we have here today with us. So, four amazing women joining from diverse organizations, different perspectives, but one thing is in common is that they are all driving key initiatives to further the agenda of gender equity within their own organizations and beyond. So starting with Diane Lawson. So Diane is the director of Sequoia Impact Program. As a part of this program, Diane is aiming to bring together Sequoia's network of all the key stakeholders, including clients and vendors and many more, to create social impact for the communities. Then moving on to Sharita. Sharita is the first DE&I leader at Allyship. She herself is a strong believer of the connection between diversity and success of an organization. So it would be great to hear her viewpoints from a DE&I perspective. Then moving on, we have Shandell. Shandell is global philanthropy manager at Snap Inc. Shandell, along with a team, is on the mission to drive equitable access for STEAM education. And one thing which is great is volunteering is at the core of our approach, and we listen to more about this during this conversation. And the fourth wonderful woman that we have with us today is Elizabeth Lamb. Elizabeth is the Senior Partnerships Manager at Breaking the Glass, which is an ESG project within S3. As a part of this program, Elizabeth liaisons with STEM companies and STEM communities to develop co-branded programs on topics such as D&I and career development. So I welcome you all, and I'm personally very excited to hear from you all, and I know the audience can't wait to hear from you, but I'll just take 2 more minutes to talk a little bit about what we are doing at Goodera, the key initiatives that we are driving to impact different areas for our communities. So I want to talk more about the campaign, Her Story. So this is a campaign that we are doing to celebrate International Women's Day and Women's History Month, like I said. So there are multiple things that we are doing as a part of this campaign. The first thing is putting a lot of spotlight on great women leaders who are making their mark, who are breaking the glass ceilings when it comes to sectors which have been historically male dominated. We are doing this through sessions like these and also fireside chats with a lot of women leaders, and we'll be publishing all their stories on our social media handles. So that's one thing we are doing. The second thing we are doing is also curating volunteer opportunities for everyone to contribute towards this cause. So simple things like teaching basic concepts to curious learners, and helping young girls finding their role models through narrating powerful stories about great women leaders. And we are doing this in association with our non-profit partners from across the globe. So this is just a glimpse of the campaign, and it's great to see a lot of interest from our clients for this particular campaign. I also want to take 1 minute to just talk about the situations, the current ongoing situation that we are hearing about every day in the news is the Ukraine crisis. We all are aware that people of Ukraine are going through mass destruction and upheaval in their own homes. And what we are doing at Goodera is supporting this campaign through what we do best. We are in constant touch with our non-profit partners who are involved in the relief efforts on ground. We are listening to them, we are listening to their needs, and we are communicating these needs to our corporate partners. And it's heartening to see a lot of companies stepping up, doing a lot of things for this Ukraine crisis. Companies have provided volunteers. They are stepping up to ship out care kits. They are making huge donations. So it's great to see all our corporate partners stepping up for this campaign. So if you are an organization who is looking for support or looking to support the crisis, do reach out to us. And if there's somebody from the marketing team here, please share the link of the Ukraine crisis page so that people can reach out. So yeah, this is pretty much it that I wanted to talk about. I'll just stop sharing my screen and back to the panel that everybody has been waiting for. So I'll start with you, Diane. Being a social impact leader, you are not only driving initiatives for Sequoia, but also for the entire network. So tell us a bit more about any key initiatives that are driving the agenda for gender equity within and beyond Sequoia's network.
Absolutely. Well, hello and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Goodera, for inviting me to be on the panel, along with Chandel and Elizabeth and Sharita. I'm excited to share some viewpoints from Sequoia. So for context and everyone in the audience, Sequoia is in the business of providing healthcare benefits, retirement plans, and total rewards for companies. So I can answer this question both for Sequoia and for our clients. So for our team, the 3 ways we're addressing gender equity include, we've recently reviewed and updated our parental leave plan to be more comprehensive and inclusive and expansive for all new parents. The other way we're really addressing gender equity is in our hiring practices. We're sure to be sure that in our pipeline, we have a gender forward, gender diverse, and all DEI characteristics, making sure that our hiring practices are inclusive and to ensure gender equity in the workplace. The third thing that we do is we provide guidance on clients on both of those things, but we also provide newsletters to our clients for gender-related healthcare, gender-related healthcare options and DEI-related topics. So those are 3 areas that we address, but what I'm really excited to talk about is we can provide gender equity across the entire workforce for everyone by providing data for business leaders to make decisions. So for example, I'm free to everyone. I encourage you to go to the Sequoia Data Forest. It's an interactive resource that provides data on hundreds of leading edge companies and some of the trending topics that companies are facing. One of them is gender equity, such as equal pay for women, such as gender representation at companies. So it talks about gender parity and what companies are doing to address that. So you can go in it for free and understand what companies are doing. Further, we enable our clients to have that capability for themselves within their own company to make sure that there's equal gender representation across roles with equal pay, to understand how far off they are in comparison to other companies with women in similar roles. So we're really driving gender equity, not only for our company, but for our clients and their companies. So that's how we're addressing that.
Thanks a lot, Diane. A lot of tangible and actionable initiatives for the audience to learn from. And specifically, I love the data part. Data-oriented approach is so concrete. Otherwise, it's just words, right? So it's great to hear that you're supporting your clients with all this data around gender equity. Thanks for that. Moving on to Chandel. So Chandel Snapchat was recently featured in America's Most Responsible Companies in 2022. So I'm sure there are a lot of things that we can learn from, a lot of good things that are already happening at Snapchat. So tell us a bit about some key philanthropic initiatives that you feel were responsible for this great achievement by the company.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. It's great to be connected with all these other leaders across the industry. But yeah, as you mentioned in the intro, Snap's corporate philanthropy focus and mission is really to expand equitable access to STEAM education and career exposure for students from under-resourced communities. And given Snap's kind of status and relative position in the technology and communications space, we consider ourselves a camera company first, I will just add. But relative to our size, we've really invested a considerable portion of our revenue as a percentage towards philanthropic initiatives. So, as a pre-profitable company looking back for the past few years relative to the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, relative, again, we were making large philanthropic investments. And so I think that as a baseline contributed to our high score, but also, our desire to really go deep in reaching students that, are from communities where they don't have a platform, that have been historically underinvested in. And we take a very keen community-based approach. And so while there are a lot of organizations doing work with large nonprofits, we take a very community-driven and localized approach to all that we do, which I think makes our programming really special. Volunteerism is really at the core of how we approach the work, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. Outside of our, direct philanthropic mission and contributions to, I think, what was a very successful kind of first round score on that social score that you mentioned earlier, is our commitment to sustainability. And as we scaling not only our philanthropic programs in a way that's equitable to the company's success, but scaling how we do business from every angle, in the sense that what are our vendors doing to make sure that they're doing, have programs in place that are not only offsetting, but mitigating, environmental impact to every layer of the business. And so between our philanthropic efforts and our, giving from that perspective and our sustainability efforts, I would say those two things were a really large driving factor. And we're very excited to have that baseline as we continue to grow and scale both of those programs.
Great, thanks a lot, Shandell. I want to reinforce the community-driven approach that you highlighted, because we work with a lot of nonprofit partners, and what we see is that the bigger ones, the bigger organizations, they are visible, right? They get funding and they get support from a lot of companies, but they are few. A lot of nonprofits are actually local within the communities, driving local impact, and they are the ones who need more support and are more invisible. So it's great to see that you are specifically focusing towards those organizations. Moving on to Sharita. So Sharita, DE&I, within this big bucket, two key themes which people generally speak about is racial equity and gender equity. Now, there are communities which lie at the intersection of these two, for example, Black women, and many more intersectionalities between teams. Do you see these specific groups differently, or are there any differences in your approach towards solving problems, solving the challenges that these intersectional groups are facing?
Yeah, no, great question. And once again, I know everyone else has said this, but excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I think part of the first issue is when people think of DE&I, they tend to think about racial and gender diversity. And sometimes people think about sexual orientation as well. We really have to get away from that being our sole focus and remember that we all have a multitude of characteristics. I'm not sure if everyone on here has ever heard of the diversity Iceberg model, but if not, please take a few minutes and Google it. But I want you to think about your characteristics as an iceberg, right? And so in essence, some of those characteristics are visible. And unfortunately, those are the ones that get the most attention because people can see them. And based on what they see, assumptions are made. But below the waterline, the rest of the iceberg are the rest of the characteristics that make up everyone. And so until we create psychological safety, we will never know how truly diverse our workforce is, because we have to have a safe space where people feel comfortable letting us know how diverse, what characteristics they have, right? And so our initiatives are really, really focused on creating that psychological safety so employees really feel comfortable bringing their full authentic selves to work every day. They feel comfortable communicating who they are and not feeling as if they have to hide parts of themselves. And then, so if you think about intersectionality, right, you mentioned that, I think sometimes that gets lost. Just for an example, if you see me, you're going to assume I'm a woman. Perfectly fine. So I am a woman, but I'm also a Black woman. I'm also a Black queer woman. I'm also a Black queer woman who happens to be a parent. And all of those characteristics come with their own unique set of circumstances. So if we're only focused on what can we do to make the situation better just for women, I'm still dealing with other issues of oppression. I'm still being stifled in other areas. And so we cannot forget those areas as well. So our initiatives, and to answer your question, do I look at them separately? No, because it's not possible for me just to show up as a woman and not show up as Black. It's not possible for me just to show up as a woman and not think about the fact that, oh, I may have to take care of my children. I may have to leave work early. You know, I have other people to tend to. So I can't take off parts of me at the door. I have natural hair, and for whatever reason, the hair of Black people tends to be a conversation constantly in the media, in the court system, of if it's, you know, professional enough, right? I'm not going to cut my hair off and come to work. So I can't eliminate parts of myself, and so we can't only focus on certain parts of an individual. Inclusion does not exclude, and so therefore we need to make sure we're creating that psychological safety. We're looking at people holistically and thinking of figuring out ways that we are making sure that we're not being sexist, racist, biased, you know, in any parts of their attributes.
Great, very, very insightful. Thanks for that, Sharita. I'm definitely going to Google up the diversity iceberg model. This is the first time, honestly, that I'm hearing about it, but completely resonate with you in terms of visible diversity and invisible diversities. And that's just, we just look at it from two categories point of view, but there's so many different things, characteristics, like you mentioned, which are just, it's too complex. So see a person as a whole, like you said, and not just get very narrow in our thinking in terms of gender equity and racial equity, but there are a lot more things beyond that as well. Great, thanks a lot. And moving on now to you, Elizabeth. So you are driving programs specifically to promote women in STEM. So tell us a bit about this Breaking the Glass program. How did it start, and how are you solving for gender disparity in the tech industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much for having me on this panel, just like everyone else said. But yes, so Breaking the Glass has seen some changes throughout the years, but our mission has always been to improve the STEM ecosystem for women. In 2016, Breaking the Glass was founded by the leadership team at Computer Futures, which is the IT staffing brand of S3. S3 is a global staffing agency as well. So they started off by hosting just one-off networking events, and they had a really great success. It was all within the Austin area. Tech professionals would join in, our clients and also candidates would attend, and it really became just a good source of community. So after seeing, this reaction, the Computer Futures team decided to invest in full-time staff to run the program, which really has been one of the most successful things that they could have done to ensure that the continues to grow. So I joined in March 2019. I've been the main point person on the project since. We've scaled from being an Austin-based networking group to a national program across STEM to include engineering and life sciences sectors as well. So what we do is we partner with STEM communities and STEM companies to create co-branded programming on the topics of diversity inclusion, technical talks, and career development as well. I always say that our programming is for everyone, but it's likely just going to be delivered by women as well. So a lot of our programs are open to the public, and we would love for you to join in and get involved. I'll drop some links in the chat. Over the years, we have partnered with companies we've partnered with IBM, Twitter, Women in Cable Telecommunications, Women Who Code, to name a few. Last year, we had over 2,000 people involved with our programming, and we're looking to break that record this year. And we've also expanded from not only hosting co-branded panel talks and webinars to also starting up mentoring, volunteering, and fundraising initiatives as well. So yeah, it's going to be a very exciting 2022.
Great, exciting, Elizabeth. And as a woman in tech myself, I have faced this challenge a lot of times in my life that, hey, I'm stuck here and I need some support, and I need to reach out to someone who can advise me on this, right? And it's great to have a community like this, and do drop in those links. I would join myself. Thanks a lot, Elizabeth. And also, I was just watching a lot of your videos, and you interview and you talk to a lot of women tech leaders on a day-to-day basis. So you are listening to all these stories of success and struggles, right? So basis your conversations, what advice will you give to organizations who want to support their women tech workforce better?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I've really noticed from all these conversations that I'm having, and an approach I take when I'm developing these initiatives, is I go in and I ask specifically, what is your community looking to achieve as well? Each organizational culture is going to have different needs. We would all be able to take the, McKinsey LinkedIn report and say, okay, this is what women here said. This is what women here said. So let's tackle it. Unfortunately, that's not going to be a specific snapshot of your organization. So what you're going to need to do is create a space where all women can voice their opinion and start analyzing what needs to be tackled to have the greatest impact on women for your organization. And I'm going to keep saying for your organization. So then from there, communicate a plan of action for your people, because your people want to see that you listened, that you heard them, and that you're going to act as well. For example, if you're located in a mid-sized city, flexible work might not be a huge priority to the women at your organization because the commute's manageable, everything's in close distance, as opposed to a large city where you might be in traffic for an hour. But your organization might struggle with having a clear ladder of advancement as well. And that's going to be, something that you would want to tackle versus flexible work. So really setting those priorities of what do your women want to see specifically? Because if you make the women at your organization understand that you want to retain them, they will be the biggest advocates for your organization. They'll say, hey, I have an amazing time here. I'm heard, I'm listened to, I'm respected. And those will be the people who help you bring in talent as well. So let your people be your cheerleaders. And that's where you will find solutions to your gender equity problems specifically for your organization.
Got it. Great. So start from within your organizations. As simple as that, right? Talk to people, exactly. Talk to women, right? Talk to women, identify their problems, and then you can refer to McKinsey reports to get some ideas on how to solve, right? That's
exactly. Yeah, they're great resources, but you can't copy and paste other people's programs and think it's going to work for your culture. I'd love to see that happen, but it's the reason we have a wide variety of topics that we address, is because each time we partner with someone, they have their own organizational needs as well.
Right. Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, coming back to you, Diane, and now I want to focus a little bit more on volunteering and also the theme of the month, which is Women's History Month. So Diane, back to you. You recently concluded a big virtual volunteering program, 100 plus of your clients and 300 plus volunteering hours, and inclusivity was also a focus area within that program. So tell us a little bit about this program, and what were your objectives, and were you able to achieve the intended outcomes out of this program?
Sure thing. So just to remind everyone, Sequoia broadly is in the business of health and well-being, and that's replicated and anchored in our social impact program as well. Our social impact program is the health and empowerment of underserved communities. So during the holidays, we did do a virtual volunteer event with Goodera where we had 300 participants engage in these volunteer activities. Our objective is to create awareness around social challenges, to create empathy, and to enable people to take action and make a difference. So we had several events that were particularly geared towards women and also towards gender diverse youth and youth of color. They were mental health events, and they were really powerful and meaningful in terms of, like, there was an educational component to the volunteer experience where people really got to learn some of what Charita was speaking to, is what's beneath the iceberg and what are people really dealing with from a mental health perspective, particularly unique to women and to gender diverse populations and people of color, youth of color. So it was very eye-opening, and people felt like they really were able to, they had a great experience. We had great feedback in the sense that people learned a lot and they felt like they made an impact they felt like the activity they did, which was creating mental health kits for these populations so that they can have some self-care for their mental health, was meaningful and impactful. So we're really happy about that. And then we carry that over into some of the nonprofits that we work with. So for example, we champion youth mental health, and we get to gender equity in the youth category because when we start young on gender equity, gender diverse, people of color, and address mental health at a young age, it really helps break down barriers. It helps break down stigma and enables everybody to have a broad ability to address gender equity and social and emotional health for all. So it's a way to start young and provide a more promising future for everyone.
Great, thanks a lot for that, Diane. And as an employee of Goodera, I feel proud that we were able to deliver this program for you and were able to create some impact for your employees and for your organization. Thanks a lot for that.
It was great.
Also
You guys did terrific.
Thanks a lot for that. Very, very kind of you. With that, just wanted to hear more about your plans for celebrating Women's History Month as well at Sequoia.
Yes. Oh my goodness, thanks for asking. I'm excited to share. So at the end of March, we're hosting a women's well-being webinar. Okay, so this includes like emotional health, physical health, career health, financial well-being, and the whole range of total well-being. We have panelists that address healthcare related issues, anywhere from family planning all the way through the family journey and how to support women and family and care. We talk about mental health care for women on this panel. We talk about things as interesting as what's forthcoming, which is healthcare for women during midlife and through menopause and how to address healthcare in that category. So we are very much celebrating women this month and women's total well-being from a health and emotional, physical and mental health perspective. Some of the other things that we're doing is, our employee resource group is having a special time slot during our all hands meeting. And this is really a moment where we take the time to talk about women in history, historical figures, the importance of gender equality. And then we also hear some personal stories from our team on breaking the barriers and what their life experience has been and their career experience has been. So we do this for regular cultural moments, and this is Women's History Month, so we'll do it this month. But all of our team members come back and say this is very informative and educational and inspiring, and it's really eye-opening. And I think that's really how we break down barriers and how we elevate the voices of those voices that need to be elevated. And this month, it's all about women. We're wearing purple and we're going for it.
Wow, that's so inspiring, Dan. I'm super excited. Thanks a lot for sharing that.
You should join the webinar.
I'll do that for sure if I get an invitation. Sure. All right. So moving on to Shendel, and before I ask the question, I just want to remind the audience that in case you have any questions from the panelists, if you want to deep dive on certain areas, do put it in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll try to take up a few questions towards the end as well. So we have reserved 5-10 minutes for answering your questions. So do feel free to put it in. If your query is directed towards a specific panelist, do mention that as well in your question. Thanks a lot. All right, back to you, Shendel. And I've heard a lot about it, right? World Kindness Week that Snapchat celebrates. I saw a lot of social media posts from employees doing some small acts of kindness and talking about these acts of kindness. Do you feel that engaging employees in such volunteering acts of kindness actually eventually makes them more empathetic and aware, and hence better allies for these communities that have been historically sidelined, in this case, women?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that going back to, our programming throughout the year, as we've mentioned several times, is very localized. SNAP has over 40 global offices. And, really speaking to what Elizabeth was saying earlier, each office has their own culture within SNAP regarding what's going to be their, flagship program that they want to run with and own within the context of, STEAM education and exposure to career pathways. Is that mentorship? Is that just community well-being more generally, and working in and with schools? So, that really kind of sets a really great foundation for us to have nonprofit partners, at the community level. But when we think about World Kindness Week, which we celebrate every year around November 13th, when World Kindness Day is an official thing. So we coalesce around that and really a day of service. And while the past 2 years have looked differently, and we've pivoted to, hybrid events with partners like Goodera, who've helped us, scale our impact from a virtual volunteering perspective, it really getting team members, especially team members at Snap who are sitting behind a computer screen all day, and especially in the context of the pandemic where everyone's been a little square, little rectangular picture on a screen, getting people out in the community and exposing them to people and places that, really exist outside of a bubble. I mean, it's no fault to anyone, right, that we are so consumed in our day-to-day just routines and workload, but it's so important to disrupt that and to go and expose team members to not only the organizations that we work with at the community level, but the people who are really benefiting from the time and the volunteer hours that our team members are supporting. We believe in the power of human connection. And while we are so excited to be getting out in the community again, we feel like that empathy muscle really has probably lost a lot of strength for our team members over the past 2 years. As much as we've gone through, the inability to be out and in the community and getting out of your neighborhood or whatever kind of ecosystem that you have yourself in from, Monday through Friday, and on your free time, and really just having conversations with team members, right? Speaking with, having like experiences that really, to your point, expand that worldview and build empathy. It's so incredibly important, especially as a global team like Snap, where, empathy in leadership is such an important part of, not only who we all should be as humans, but how we develop as better leaders. And realizing that, so many things are interconnected. I think that it's really easy to, again, be in your core area and really work at what you're doing from a career perspective, but it's all relative. And as part of that, it's really important for us to leverage team members, time and talents to go out and say, hey, I don't have a traditional career path. And a lot of people at Snap don't either. And it's a really important obligation that we have as a successful tech company to go out into communities and to speak to kids who never would probably have the opportunity to connect with team members from Snap otherwise, and say, hey, I come from, a single parent household, or, my family received public benefits, or, and saying, hey, I went to a community college and transferred and worked really hard to get here, but you don't have to go from A to B all the way to Z in this traditionally, what a lot of, I think, young people think, your path needs to be to land at Snap. That is a really big piece, is really breaking that narrative down and saying, no, that is such a critical part of building diversity in teams, right? It's about more than, just like background women, cultural identity, et cetera. It's really about breaking the narrative as well, that you need to have this perfectly narrated story arc of your college experience has to be this, or, your socioeconomic background. It's breaking that entire narrative. And that is such a critical piece of the work. And we're really invested in that.
Great. Sounds amazing from both sides, actually. So the person who is volunteering, they are sort of able to put, like you said, empathy, right? By putting your problems in perspective. It's all relative, right? So when you're stressing about a big presentation coming up, but then you speak to this kid who doesn't even have access to basic education, it's just, you realize the privileges that you have, right? And from the beneficiary's point of view, just breaking down those narratives, like you said, that, hey, I didn't do this ABC to reach here, which might be there in your mind. It's just anybody can do it, right? With the right mentorship, etc. So great, thanks for that.
And I'll just say, because
Go ahead, please.
I'll just say one more thing, because I think you kind of touched on it, is something that, we're, as Snap's global, like broader philanthropy team, like that's really the core of our work. But I think what you said about, putting privilege in check is a huge part of what I think our team's role is, when it comes to linking our team members with volunteer opportunities. And it's like, how can we go deep? How we're not going to drop in, we're not going to drop out. How are we investing, and how are you investing your time and energy into making communities that have been historically underserved better? And putting privilege in check is a huge part of that.
Great to hear that, Chandel. So with this, the next question, what are you doing to celebrate Women's History Month? What are your plans? How are you engaging your employees for this month?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a very robust network of employee resource groups as well, ERGs. And it's something that's really interesting, I think, from my position and my role within SNAP, is that, allyship is really important. But allyship is more complicated than we think it is, in the sense that, while we, SNAP women, for example, they have their own set of priorities year over year for how they want to engage the community, or how they want to, provide a platform for, team members inside to really kind of speak their mind on a wide variety of topics. So for me, it's allowing the group to set their own priorities, and the philanthropy team being able to support them in what their goals are. Having said that, I think it's really important to note there's a lot of a lot of conversation around, companies historically saying, oh, like, let's take a group of women to solve how we get more women in tech, or how, right? You place that burden on the group that's already underrepresented. And that applies to everything. That's to women of color, that's to any BIPOC, individual in any industry, right? And so it's a very fine line of wanting to empower an employee resource group to, do their best work, but also letting them know that you understand that the work shouldn't always be on them, and that everyone else has to step up and meet the moment. So in that sense, we're working, going back to Women's History Month, we're working with our SNAP Women group to do a variety of panels and different conversations. Our SNAP Women ERG was a huge part of our World Kindness Week activation. They really owned, initiatives with community-based partners that they were already, have deep ties to, which is great, right? Like, how are we leveraging each other's strengths? Because at the end of the day, expanding equitable access to STEAM education, like, women are a big part of that expanding equitable access piece. But we have to be very mindful, to Charita's point earlier, that there are so many other layers to people besides just being a woman, right? Like, I think that for me is the most poignant thing that's come out of this conversation is everyone needs that constant reminder that, like, while, as a philanthropy team, we're here to support our ERG community through philanthropic initiatives and like building relationships, we also have to realize that to be a true ally, like, we need to be leading and changing the way, we approach the work as well.
Great, thanks for that, Chandel. I think Diane also touched upon ERGs briefly. So I can understand the focus on these specific groups, because if you're, as a global philanthropy leader, your focus is on a lot of things, like a lot of causes. But if you empower and enable these specific groups, there can be a lot of focused effort, and they will continue driving the agenda for the entire year, right? While keeping a balance, like you said, that letting them know that, hey, you have support, right? But at the same time, empowering them to do more and motivate them and celebrating success, right? If there's a successful program, celebrate it, talk about it, right? So understand the importance of the ERGs that you both have mentioned. All right, moving on to Sharita, you. So I understand that you'll soon be incorporating new volunteering as a part of the new employee onboarding program. Is this a move towards creating more inclusive cultures right from the beginning?
Yeah, so I really think that by including a volunteering event during our onboarding session, we are setting the stage for how important giving back to the community is to our organization. We aren't, in essence, just talking the talk, we're definitely walking the walk, right? At Allyship, we're very intentional about the volunteering experiences we curate. Just for example, we integrate volunteering and philanthropy with our employee resource structure. So we ask every ERG to leverage a portion of their budget for nonprofit donations. And we ask that during their dedicated month that they curate at least one volunteering event that serves the communities which they support. In addition, because we are a global organization, we ensure that we host volunteering events across multiple time zones to ensure that we are being inclusive of those that aren't located specifically within the United States or wherever that particular volunteer event was originally occurring. Another way that we leverage volunteering to build inclusive workspaces is through our strategic partnerships. So we have 5 core pillars at Allyship, and throughout those, we commit to having a DEI lens through all of them. One of our requirements for nonprofits is to become a strategic partner is that their mission is related to DEI. So for example, we've partnered with organizations such as codepath.org, whose goal is to increase diversity in technology. In honor of Black History Month, also our Week of Understanding, and our first volunteer event that we did through onboarding, we were able to partner with Goodera. And so we have partnered to mentor HBCU students. We did the sign language event a couple of times, which has gone over amazingly. We also partner with organizations such as Hack Your Future, where we're creating data science workshops to upskill refugees in Denmark. The Codec Project, where they help Muslim women get into the tech space at Singapore. So it's important for us to be strategic in those partnerships, in those volunteering events. It's very important to set that stage from the beginning because we want new employees to know who we are and what we stand for. And then by doing so and having those events, we are exposing our employees to other populations that they may not have had interaction with in the past. They may not have thought about or learned the hindrances those other demographics have. And so not only are they giving back to the community, but hopefully they're having a personal impact and they are expanding their knowledge and education there as well.
Thanks a lot for that, Sharita, and agree with you. And one thing that comes to my mind is that when you incorporate volunteering in the beginning, these people in a way sort of might also become champions for volunteering, and whichever team that they go ahead and work with, they will spread word about it, right? Which is great. And you also mentioned sign language. So I just wanted to mention, not taking a lot of credit for it, but I was in the team a few months back and we were ideating. There's an idea lab at Goodera, and we were sort of ideating, hey, what are the new sort of volunteering formats that we should do? And when I first tried it out myself, it was so emotional for me, getting exposed, to the deaf culture, and it's just really helped me put things in perspective, like I mentioned before. So thanks a lot for that. And with that, just one more question, Sharita. So Altyrex ran a very powerful campaign, I'm Black History, during the Black History Month. What are your plans for Women's History Month?
Yeah, no, great question. So on March the 8th, we have our International Women's Day panel. And so we have leaders in the organization, some of which are women identifying, but also a male identifying ally. They're going to get together and have a panel or fireside chat, if you will, to talk about what we can do to continue moving that needle, how we're breaking the bias, not only in our company, not only within the organization, in their smaller workspaces, but within the communities we work as, we live in as well. March the 15th, we're specifically having a Break the Bias workshop. And so with that, we'll have breakout rooms with scenarios that highlight a time where our bias is present in the workplace and allow individuals in those breakout rooms to determine the best way to approach it and recognize the bias and how we can try to be rid of that particular bias. And then we'll return from the breakout room and have that conversation with individuals about how they felt, was the best way to handle the situation, their feelings that came into play as they watched the scenario happen, and kind of point out how these are common scenarios that are happening in the workplace. And so hopefully equipping them with a better understanding of them, but also how to tackle those situations in the workplace so we can continue to focus on that psychological safety and make sure this is a safe place to work. On March 22nd, we are doing altar talks. I know a couple other panelists talked about their women ERGs. And so we have a Women and Allies ERG that serves our women identifying, non-binary, non-gender conforming, trans and cisgender women population as well. And they created last year altar talks, which is like a TEDx style conversation where individuals talking, sharing their story. And then of course we have a Q&A with that. And so on March 22nd, we are hosting one of those with our President and Chief Revenue Officer, Paula Hansen, and we're specifically going to talk about addressing biases towards women in the organization and how we can work on, again, creating this a safe space and be rid of those biases. So really looking forward to that. And then just real quickly about our social media, because you mentioned the campaign we ran on social media for Black History Month. We're going to do something very similar with our women identifying individuals. So throughout the month, we will spotlight women identifying employees, give them opportunity to share their story. So please be on the lookout for that on our LinkedIn page and other social media platforms. But in addition, we sent an email out today company-wide wanting to get all of our employees active with this Break the Bias campaign. And so we have asked them to post on their social media about how they are breaking the bias every day in their personal life, in the workplace. Hopefully everyone is familiar with this, but if not, with that, this is the theme for breaking the bias. So we're asking them to post a picture with their arms crossed in an X and then use the hashtag break the bias and then people of Alter X. So really looking forward to seeing all that happening, and hopefully you all can join too.
Absolutely. It feels so powerful just saying it out loud, right? Break the bias. So very
Yes.
powerful signal and the message. So definitely would love to participate. All right, back to you, Elizabeth. And from you, I'm looking for a different perspective. I know that you volunteer for a nonprofit organization, and this is an organization which is specifically working towards empowering young girls. So from you, I want to understand from a volunteer's perspective, how has this experience impacted you as a person? And based on your experiences with this organization, how do you think that volunteering can actually help in promoting more women in STEM?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So yeah, I love this organization. It's called Girls Empowerment Network. They started in Central Texas. I know that they also have a location in Houston and they're expanding rapidly. So definitely go check them out. But volunteering with this population has always reminded me of the privileges I was granted. The family life and the communities that raised me were designed for me to be successful. I didn't have a lot of doubts that as a woman, it would be a challenge to be in the workplace. I was more like, oh, how do I be as successful as the people around me? So when I am volunteering, I'm making sure that I can be the best role model and resource as possible. So a resource as a connector, as a source of information as well, so I can extend those privileges I was granted. I keep in mind when I'm doing this volunteer work is you can't be what you can't see. As a volunteer to girls and young women, tell them what you do. Like, even if they don't seem interested in it at the moment, tell them how you do and how you got there so that they can imagine that path to success for themselves. Because, you know, I've struggled with this as well. It's like, oh, what's your goals for the next 10 years? I'm like, that's a lifetime away. But helping them think about all the different paths that can help them get there to where they want to be one day, or at least having fun with the ability to imagine it, is something that I always keep in mind. And then for your other question is, how can volunteering benefit women in STEM? I like to think about it as not necessarily even like how your volunteer efforts can help the women in STEM population, but how you can use volunteering to improve yourself as a professional as well. If you want to improve your public speaking and don't have an opportunity for that at work, go find organizations that will benefit from what you have to say. As someone that develops programming, we are always looking for people to speak. So trust me, you know, put a few feelers out there. You'll definitely find someone who's like, yeah, I'll put you on stage. And then if you're also looking to make a career pivot, you can join a board and say, okay, I'm going to be in charge of the communications for this organization, or I'm going to balance the budget. And that gives you an opportunity to step your toe into the water of what that work looks like without having to, leave your job, or maybe that's even just a skill you bring to your traditional 9 to 5 as well. And then when you are in your performance reviews, talk about the things you do outside of work. Say, I volunteered here and there. That's, here are some things that I've learned. And it can feel like bragging at first, but it's going to shed good light on you. And it's also going to shed a more positive light on the organization that you're passionate about and that you're volunteering to as well. Because, some of the best things you can do is let people know that those organizations exist as well.
Great. A lot of volunteering opportunities that we also have is about just, hey, spread the word. That's the easiest thing to do, right? Talk about them, use your network to just increase their reach. So a couple of things that I want to summarize again from what you said, Elizabeth. You can't be what you can't say. Very, very powerful. That's going to stay with me. Thanks a lot for that. And also the thing that you mentioned about learning new skills, volunteering, it's not about just giving, but you're getting a lot more for yourself as well. And so true that all of us have something, right, which we are not able to do, or a skill that we are not able to develop during our day-to-day jobs. Go out there, volunteer, and learn from it. So there's a lot of things that you can get out of this experience as well. So thanks for that, Elizabeth. And one last question about Women's History Month. Any specific plans on celebrating Women's History Month? How are you planning to celebrate it?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a few initiatives going on with Breaking the Glass and also with our internal employee resource group for women as well. So on March 30th, we're hosting a Women in STEM Inclusive Leadership panel as well. That'll be open to the public. We'll also have the U.S. President of S3 speaking on that panel as well, Sunny Ackerman. So definitely, I'll drop a link for you to join in for that as well. We'll also be continuing our career development series with Girl Develop It. We once a month go in and speak to their data chapter and bring in our recruitment consultants to talk about, what does the market look like for this talent right now? Here, and another example of role models as well. So like now we've transitioned to the Meet the Professionals section of this career curriculum that we're developing. So they'll meet an entry-level professional. The next month they'll meet a mid-level professional. The following month they'll meet a more senior as well, so that they can get a better understanding of what day-to-day work looks like in these spaces too. And then within our employee resource groups, we're bringing in a workshop about, defining your career goals as well. As I mentioned before, I struggle with like, what do I want to do 10 years down the road? So sometimes just having that designated space to say like, this is what I want out of my job is so important, so that when that opportunity comes for you to talk about it, you can say it, and then you can receive sponsorship based on that as well. And then just a few smaller initiatives, video communications, profiles of, our leadership within the organization too, more X's. We'll all see the Break the Bias X's everywhere. So yeah, it'll always be an exciting month. Also, I'm in Austin, so South by Southwest is coming back. So I'll have to dust off my in-person networking skills for that too.
Great. So a lot of action coming up. Great to hear about that, Elizabeth. All right. So that was pretty much it from my side. We do have some minutes left, so we'll be answering questions from the audience. So far we have just one question. Again, nudging everyone. Any questions that you have, this is the time to just put it in the chat or in the Q&A. It's not every day that you get to meet 4 wonderful women together, so make good use of it, I would say. So this question, I would just read it out for everyone. What are some ways in which startups and SMBs make gender diversity part of their DNA from the start? Why do they scramble to meet business goals? So maybe we can start with you, Diane, because you might be working with a lot of SMBs as well. So would you have a point of view on this one?
Yeah, That's interesting. We just recently did a panel. Actually, last year we had a panel on starting a social impact program for startups, but inherent in that is how do you build gender diversity into your company from the start? And like everything, it's really making, I think that the takeaway that we had, if I were to summarize it quickly, would be make it known, make a statement clear and bold that this is your commitment and your priority, so that everybody who you bring on board is aware from the outset that this is your purpose and vision and intent. And then everyone will align behind that in their practices and how they go forward. So that would be my quick takeaway for everyone on that.
Great. Anyone else? Any thoughts here?
Yeah, I would just like to add, because the statement was made, like, how can we do this while we're scrambling to meet business priorities? This needs to be a business priority. And so your diversity efforts, your philanthropic efforts, all your philanthropy, all the volunteering you're doing, it needs to be tied to your business priorities. And so therefore, everything that everyone is doing in the organization, they're trying to meet those priorities, they're trying to meet those goals. If this is linked to those priorities and goals, then we'll be doing them at the same time. I don't think it has to be an either or. I agree with Diane, make the statement, be upfront, be loud and proud about it, let it be known that we're doing it, but definitely tie it to your OKRs, your SLAs, make sure that it's important and that we're focused on it.
Yeah, and that's very critical, especially startups and SMBs, where you're really struggling to meet your business goals. Everything is moving so fast. You're finding your ground as a business, and then it's just, I've seen a lot of times it's happening that these things take a back seat, but consciously just focus on those, like you said, Sharida, put it as a part of your OKRs, your KRAs, to make them a part of your culture. All right, so we have one more question from Annie. So Annie's asking, what are the best examples of positive change in the workplace that you have noticed in the past 5 years? Who wants to jump in on that one?
I think just from like kind of a more 1,000-foot view as a person, I think that the shift that millennials and Gen Zers and et cetera, are going to have on companies is that they're going to have an expectation that, like, if they want to join a company or they want to buy a product who makes something that they really enjoy, that there has to be a social impact, like, and not just like, from a superficial level, but that companies are investing in people and places and giving back and that are going to carry the next generation forward and are doing good. I don't think that accountability is really inspiring. And I think that every year we only see that more and more, whether that's in the diversity and inclusion space or the environmental accountability space. I think that more and more people are demanding that of companies they either work for and with, or from the products that they buy and how they vote with their money.
Great. It's so encouraging to hear about the progress. Anybody else?
I just like to tackle, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, but going even back to our first Q&A question as well, this is a continuing trend that's not going to stop. So if you want your organization to be successful and you don't want to have cleanup work at the beginning, start with your diversity inclusion efforts today. Hire outside help as well. Bring in consultants, go talk to people. You're not going to have all the answers within your organization as well too.
Great. And there's one very interesting question that I want to take up. Wonderful initiatives across all 4 organizations. Curious to know what's the participation level of male employees and leadership in these initiatives.
I'll jump in and say that I believe our male identifying individuals are quite involved. I think if I look at all the diverse characteristics or demographics that people have the ability to be involved in, it's been my experience that when it comes to being a woman or supporting the initiatives behind women, most people are able to get behind that. We're all tend to be born from mothers. We may have sisters, wives, cousins, whatever. So there's generally someone who can connect with someone in their family or friends or colleagues that are women, that may not be the case, other demographics, when you're talking about sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, et cetera. And so I can say that in our organization, our men identifying have been very, very supportive. They show up as allies. They want to be mentors. They want to support. We partner with the SOAR program and for our women in sales and leadership. And we have a lot of male identifying leaders who are mentors in that program. So I can just say that from our perspective, our organization, they are very, very involved. And I'm quite proud of that.
Great. We are almost running out of time. So I'll just end it on a quick the last question for the session, and I think this is great. It's what is the one single biggest advice each of you would like to give to all women who are working hard every day? Each one of you, what is your advice?
Talk about your goals. Don't shut up about them. Honestly, like let people know where you want to be in your career as well, because when people know what you're working towards, they'll be able to sponsor you. They'll be able to connect you with mentors. They'll be able to think you'll be top of mind when new opportunity comes around. In meetings that I have that'll, talk about like, oh, we're seeing the program go this way. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be global head of Breaking the Glass one day, and just letting people know like that's the title I'm gonna have one day, and be loud and be clear about what you want from your job, and people will be attracted to it.
And just in the interest of time, I'll put mine into a tagline. What is it? Find a role model that inspires you, believe in yourself, and take initiative.
That's great. Awesome. Sharita, Chandel, from you.
I'm going to say fall in love with yourself. As long as we love ourselves, we're no longer looking for external ways to fulfill us, because we can find it in ourselves. And then when we do that, we will show up unapologetically. We will take up space, and we will feel proud doing that.
Great. Chandel.
I think for me, it all comes back to balance, and what I consider to be kind of a myth that in one day or in 1 week, you're going to find the balance among all of the things you want to, that make you fulfilled, right? Your work, your personal life, and let's say your hobbies, right? And really thinking about balance on a longer term scale. Like how am I balancing my year to make sure that I'm being fulfilled in all these areas, versus saying like, oh, and every single day I need to make sure that like my home life is fulfilled while also feeling like I'm, being fulfilled at work. I think for me, it's kind of changing the narrative around a myth that balance is something you're able to strike as a professional on a day-to-day level.
Great, wonderful advice from all of you, and what a great way to end the session. So thank you, everyone. Truly thank the audience from my heart for taking out the time and staying on with us, even though we are a couple of minutes overboard. Thanks a lot. Have a great day and take care. In case some of your questions were not answered, we will get in touch with the panelists, and we will get those answers to you through email or other channels. So look out for those. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.